All right, everybody. Welcome to another week of our show discussing game design and industry topics. Joining me, as always, is my co-host, indie developer Shark. How are you doing?
Better. Still, you know, always could go even better.
Mm-hmm.
Well, honestly, it'll amaze me if that becomes even slightly difficult to become better.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm keeping busy myself. I have less than, looks like, 25 days to get my book finished. And I have 2 chapters left to write in it, and then all that lovely image sourcing that I've been dreading.
Yeah, I mean, how many images do you got to source?
Probably a good 50 to 60.
What are the basic kind of requirements for that?
It's gotta be an image that is fair use. It has to make sense with the topic. And this time I'm going to make sure that everything has a lovely little caption so that it makes sense
Caption in game or caption under the picture?
under the picture.
Yeah.
And thankfully, I can get by with fair use to some extent. But yeah, like companies like Nintendo, they will not release any images unless it's already like a press related piece.
Yeah, so you'll have to get actual press images from that for
Yeah.
that, if
Mm-hmm.
any of those even apply.
Yes. Let's see. What else is happening game wise? Oh, I finally started playing Doom Eternal the other night. We'll be playing that probably Monday. And I went on I guess, a miniature shopping spree with all the games on sale lately. Got the Mega Man collections. I think I now own every Mega Man series except for Legends and the Battle Network series.
Hmm. Well, I'd definitely be interested in seeing you run through a lot of the X games.
Yes. Let's see. I finished Undermine. Undermine wasn't bad. I just wish that there was a little bit more to the kind of the roguelikiness of it, or however we want to do it. Let's see. I finished Gloom. I really like Gloom. Like that to me, like I would put in that same category as something like Vision Soft Reset, being like a really great design that just didn't really, hit things in terms of marketability.
Hmm. Yeah, maybe. I haven't. I'm not remembering that one.
That was the 2D. It was all like gray, black and white. No, actually more like grayish, like Lovecraftian game. I played it. I think I want to say 3 nights ago, 4 nights ago, maybe at this point.
Oh, I think I know the one you're talking about now.
Yeah. And that goes really well with our topic this week when we discuss how to make a successful video game. So, Shark, what do you think? Like, is it possible to make a successful video game?
Yeah, it's easy. I mean, you just make a game and then it succeeds, right?
Yeah. I mean, that's it. We're done. We can wrap it up early this week.
Exactly. I
Mm.
mean, you just make a game and it's successful. Done. You know.
And if you make your game like Nintendo, that's doubly successful.
Yeah. I mean, if you put Nintendo's name at the beginning of the game, and you don't have to get any kind of special permission for that. But if you
No.
do that, you'll sell 100 more copies.
Yeah, just say every game is from Nintendo.
Yeah.
It's just that simple, people. Why hasn't anyone figured this out yet?
Yeah, exactly. It's so simple that you could just, I don't know, write a book on it that's like literally just one page long, and everybody would just do it.
Mm-hmm.
There would be no more failed games.
Yep.
It doesn't matter how flooded the market is. It doesn't matter if every person in the world reads your book and everybody in the world puts out a game. That just solves everything.
There we go. I'm sure this won't turn into a hour and a half long discussion, right?
No, no, no.
Don't-
Definitely not a 10 or 15 hour discussion that we have to continue over multiple videos or anything like that.
And to Catfish's point, you gotta have anime girls in there too. That's the
Oh
other.
yeah,
That's a trifecta for success.
yeah,
Memes, mobile, anime girls.
and you gotta have Nintendo Chan in there.
There we go. Guys, have you had a chance to play any new games on your side, Shark?
I have. I've been playing Reventure
Oh, yeah.
today.
It was part of that bundle too. I think. Did we both get the same bundle?
I probably.
Yeah.
I don't remember where I got it from, but I definitely did not buy a singular. I either got it for free or got it in a bundle or something.
Mm-hmm.
And that game, like, I have mixed feelings about it. Like, it's good in the way that pretty much everything you do matters. Bad in the way that there's not really much to the game besides making these choices that instantly end in death.
Yeah.
And
It reminds me of another game that I can't remember off the top of my head that you had to just keep repeating it over and over again.
yeah, I don't know. I have a feeling I know the one you're talking about, but I'm not bringing it to my head image wise.
Yeah. And I thought it was like an interesting idea. I love some of the memes I got from some of those screenshots I posted on the Discord there.
Which ones?
I posted some screenshots from Revenge of my character dying. This was like about a week ago.
Oh, I didn't even see those.
Aw. I mean, they were just set up perfectly for you, too. I'll have to link them after the stream if I can find them again.
Yeah, what channel was that in?
It should have been in general.
I
I
can't
think.
believe I didn't see them then.
And I would like to see like more games experiment with that, but it's so hard. I think, and you should. I think you know this from Chromasia. It's very hard to convince somebody to keep replaying a game, even if you give them like new content or you scale things up. There's just that very, I think, weird sense of saying, I have to restart from zero. I have to restart the story every time I play it.
Yeah, and actually I was talking to somebody about that before, about they were talking about, should I make alternate ends of my story? Should I do this? Should I do that? And I was looking at it. I was like, what reason do they have to play to get those different endings?
Mm-hmm.
Because like from what he was talking about, is the endings were exactly the same as the as the normal beating the end of it, but so you have to completely beat the game to get an ending.
Mm-hmm.
But the endings were only different based off of a few choices you made during the gameplay, and you had to play out the entire gameplay to get to the end to get that payoff. It's like, ugh.
Do you really want to invest more of that time? And
Yeah.
like I was telling Shark about that game Gloom before we started the stream. I thought Gloom did it really well. For one thing, it's only about a 10 to 15 minute long run, so it's not like you're investing a whole lot of time. And you do have to do different things in order to get those endings, specifically fight different bosses.
Yeah. Back to on that guy, I was telling him that if you want your game to have multiple endings, you need to give the players a reason to replay.
Mm-hmm.
He's like, well, there's a bunch of collectibles in there. No.
Yeah.
Not 100%ing the game is not a reason to replay it unless you're just going to replay it anyway.
Mm-hmm. There has to be something new to do in the game, whether it's, and I think a lot of games, like at some point we need to have a topic about like new game plus or reasons to replay a game. But like they released the expansion or the DLC for Blasphemous earlier this week, and the whole DLC in terms of content is New Game Plus focused, which doesn't sound that bad, but there doesn't really seem like a lot has been changed in the New Game Plus. You can put on the penance that adds difficulty, but you're still doing the same stuff. It's just a little bit harder.
Mm-hmm.
Like, my favorite example would be something like Ninja Gaiden Black, where each time you play the game at a higher difficulty, they completely shuffle all the enemy placements and items. So it feels like you're getting a legitimately different game.
Yeah, but no, the Dead Cells. With Dead Cells, the issue is you're already getting that every run.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not anything special or different.
Yeah.
Because they're not handcrafted worlds, they're random generated, or procedurally generated, rather.
Yeah, and I didn't like how they made things harder with the different boss cells.
Yeah, I haven't played in a while, so I remember playing the very first version of it before it even released,
Mm-hmm.
and I was absolutely in love with it. But before the game even released, I quit playing it, and I haven't played it much since then.
Mm-hmm.
Because just it ran its course, And I had a conversation with somebody not too long ago about, and I don't know if it was on your Discord or somebody else's, but it was like, I can't, like, there's a certain point where mechanics become, just not fun to play anymore.
Mm-hmm.
That's the reason why, like, I haven't beat most Mario games, because they get old for me.
Mm-hmm.
I absolutely loved and played the heck out of Mario 1. Absolutely loved and played the heck out of Mario 3. Absolutely loved and played the heck out of Mario 64. The other ones, I mean, like, I think the farthest one I've got through besides those was like a 3D World on the Wii U with the Cat Mario and everything.
Mm-hmm.
I think I got up to like the 6th world on that. Most of the others, I don't even think I made it to like the 3rd world kind of thing. Like they just didn't offer enough that was worth me playing, because it was all just the same kind of thing.
And yeah, like for me, that I feel that in a lot of games where I've mastered the game, but there's still 15 more hours of content I need to get through, and it's not really changing.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's why for a lot of games these days, unless I'm playing them on stream, I really don't finish them. Because I usually just end up getting bored, halfway to 3/4 through. And I see this a lot, especially in like RPG style games, where it's not about mastery, it's about stats. It's, I know what I have to do, but I need to level these characters, 30 more times so they can actually do my strategy. It's as I said, I was playing that game Arc Knights, and it's that same kind of issue. Is that it doesn't matter if I am the best tower defense player or the master tactician. If a character can't finish an enemy fast enough, there's not a damn thing I can do about it other than grind. Or in a mobile game, spend money.
Yeah. Which is why I tried to make it where the grinding was minimum, and that, it was more, I tried to go more for the tactics and everything. And then if you weren't good enough to get the tactics, then you could grind a little bit. You grinded it a little bit by failing at the tactics kind of thing. And, I think I could have done a better job at that, of course. But, that's what one of the main things I was going for in my last one. The word of the day, Chromasia, there.
Mm-hmm. And it's very hard, again, to like motivate people to play through an entire game. That's probably a good segue into our topic later on. That when I look at these games, I hear people saying, oh, it's the best game ever, everybody loves it. And then when I look at the stats, I see like maybe 20% of the people played more than an hour of that game.
Yeah. You know what we need to do? We need to get a spreadsheet going or something, some kind of sheet that lists like the game and how far somebody's gone through it.
Mm-hmm.
Because I'm sure there's something to learn there for sure.
Yep, definitely.
I'm sure you've pulled out some patterns in your little bit of looking at it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think one thing that I've seen is that every game has a drop off. That goes without saying. But once you get to a certain point, those players are invested in seeing it through. So that once it drops like maybe 32%, that same 32% will probably beat the game. But you can still see very quickly just how much it just on excuse me, you can see just like at those points, or all of a sudden the player engagement just dive bombs in terms of people willing to finish this game.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said about that game, Eastshade, I think that's what it was called. That that painting game that people were like declaring that game so amazing, so many people bought it, it's, positive on Steam, and then when I look at the Steam achievements, less than I think 20% of the people played it for more than an hour.
You know what I'm wondering is if those big drop-offs are the point where there's too many pain points for a lot of people, kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. And again, when
Because
we say pain
I'm
points,
guessing that it is.
could be like we're not just talking about the game being frustrating. This could be UI, UX, or that you just finally figure out this is what this game is. I don't want to do this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that reminds me of another game that I was playing new. I'm trying to remember the name of it. Let's see here.
And while you're trying to remember that, and like for a lot of these games, it's just very hard. And this is what makes it very hard to analyze them, because you'll have people saying, "Oh, it's a great game." You're just attacking the developer. You don't know what you're talking about. And then when you say them, "Well, how long did you play it?" They're like, "Yeah, I played for 15 minutes, and that was it."
Hmm.
And to Ford's point, yeah, we did check out Ooblets. I think this was about a month ago, during I think it was like the very first night of early access. It seemed okay, but it didn't seem like anything to get really excited about.
Oh, I remember the game now. It's Let Them Come.
Oh, I think I just played that one.
You might have. I know you played it. I don't know when you played it, but I know you played it.
It wasn't on stream, but I did play it. Looks like 5 days ago.
Well, I played it, and it was just you're stuck in one room, and you're just doing the single tower defense, and it's just giving you this ridiculous stuff and making you basically grind through it, and it's just all stuck in this one room, and there's like no variance. It's just buy these upgrades, and and they're all not even all of them are really good upgrades, kind of thing. They're just like there's 4 or 5 upgrades that are really good. Everything else, not so much. Get those 4 or 5 and go at it, and it's still going to be a grindy mess.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, oh.
Yeah. I thought it was just okay. Again, there's my word, not bad. And it got to the point where I finished the game, where I finished like the first loop of it. I was like, I don't want to do this, 5, 6 more times.
Yeah, I got to wave, I don't know, like 20 or 30, and it's like, is this all there is to the game? This okay. I was like, I was asking that same question around like wave 5 or so, and waiting. I was like, there's got to be more to this game, and just kept on playing and playing and playing, and got to wave 20, and it's like, there ain't no more. Exit, uninstall. I should have quit at wave 5.
There you go. And I'm trying to think if there's anything else like news related that happened this week. Of course, the whole Marvel platform exclusivity that I want to do a video on. Let's see. Somebody was arguing with me again about why mobile games are good in terms of their monetizations. That's another hour-long rant right there.
Oh yeah.
Any news this week that was interesting for you?
Not that I'm recalling off the top of my head. I'm sure there was something, but nothing I'm recalling.
See, if chat has anything, let us know.
I could probably find something.
Let's see. I'm just scanning Gamasutra really fast. Nothing like too out there.
Oh, there was a funny thing with Sony, where they, showed us basically, in theory, stolen game. There's no confirmations behind that, of course, because why would there be until things completely explode? But basically, there's a conflict between basically, I think it's a CEO and like rest of the development team, and the CEO basically submitted the game to Sony and says, "Go show that off. It's my game." And all the dev team is like, "Oh no. And now I think there's potentially a lawsuit going on now because of that. I know Sony got a lot of flack for it. Of course, it's Sony. There's a good chance that Sony didn't know. But knowing Sony, even if they did know, they would have probably still done it.
Yeah, like that Tiger game from a few years ago.
Yeah, I meant like they could have known about it. They very well could have, but odds are they didn't. But odds are if they did, they would have still done it. So you might as well consider that they knew about it.
Gold selling scandal with WoW. There's always seems to be a gold selling scandal, I think, with that game.
Yeah.
Or I keep hearing about it. Alright. Well, let's get to a quick list of some games coming out this week, and then we'll get to our major topic. So let me grab that here really fast. And there are some weird ones coming out this week. Hope you're excited about this.
That never happens.
Alright, so
weird games.
And I think some of these are really good examples when we get to our major topic too. So we have this game, Total Dark, that the thumbnail looks decent, it has a decent name to it, but there's no descriptor about what this gameplay is. So then I click on it, and it's literally an Arkanoid clone. There doesn't even seem to be like anything like unique. Like I'm not getting anything that tells you why this is different from Arkanoid.
It's different in graphics.
And that's not really selling a game.
Nope. No, I mean it kind of is. I mean that's what whatchamacallit does basically. I'm forgetting their
Lazy Bear again?
Yeah, Lazy Bear.
Alright, so here's one. Captain Frogger. So you would assume that this is a game about you. It's Frogger, right?
Yeah, probably.
No, it's not.
A monkey.
The frogs just wanted to hug their good friend Gorilla, but the surprised Gorilla tried to repel the frogs. The Gorilla and the frogs are best friends, though. Is there a shark in this game?
I hope not, being an asset flip and all.
There's a screenshot.
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
all
good.
Of them frogs.
Wait, there's disaster difficulty. Where's masochistic difficulty?
Yeah, I mean, that's probably beyond disaster.
And there's a game that I'm really afraid to click on.
Oh, yeah. Like, You gotta have your simulators like that, as well as your hens wearing ties and a suit and
Mm-hmm.
everything. You know, running around. They go together.
Find the letter H. Oh,
Is this Sesame Street the game?
maybe? It is some really good art.
Oh yeah, it kind of looks like Sesame Street art.
Oh, it's a game he made when he was going through hard times. It's supposed to be a therapy game.
I
Okay.
was finding H's. How is that therapy?
I don't know.
I mean, I could see that being therapy if you were, I don't know, every time you see an H, you screamed out and, freaked out. Like a YouTuber kind of thing. Like if you were acting like a YouTuber every time you see an H, then yes, this game is probably good therapy for you. It's probably also going to make you very, very loud and very, very annoying to me.
Alright, so we have a turn based card game. Ooh, 78 missions.
Yeah, that looks kind of reminiscent of Triple Triad,
Hmm.
but with basic stats, with more Magic the Gathering kind of stats.
This is a remastered version of the original game released in 2011. Oh, now it comes with full HD 4K graphics. You can really see the 4K here.
Yeah, you can see all the Ks, all four of them. It's like find the H's, but now we're finding the fours and the K's.
Prehistoric Dude. Oh, it's a mini Metroidvania.
I don't like the word mini there.
Yeah, what does mini mean?
Probably that it's ridiculously short.
Very basic pixel graphics, too.
Mm-hmm.
Blood War. Near Deadline. Escape from Tethys. Another game about Hitler. Difficult action adventure Metroidvania game. Alright, well, it is a Metroidvania.
And it is difficult.
There we go. That's all I need to hear, right?
Yep. Well, what you need to hear is that it's masochistic.
Mm-hmm.
Masochistic Metroidvania game.
Oh, you missed it. I post a game called Josh's Journey, a 4-player beat 'em up that's coming out soon. I think that's the game for Josh.
Yeah, we have the game for Tim too.
Mm-hmm.
Which was the one we were talking about earlier. I'm blanking on the name of it. The Revenger.
Oh, yeah.
Because Revenger, your name is Tim.
Oof. There's a screenshot right here. Can you tell what's happening in this screenshot?
Oh yeah, like every last detail of that just, it's mind blowing how amazing that gameplay is right there.
Oof. Tragedy of Loneliness. Okay, looks like it's an RPG Maker game. What's a kinetic novel?
A kinetic novel? I think that's just a visual novel where you make choices.
Metamorphosis. Wait, why does this sound familiar?
AKA, whatchamacallit.
I think I got a press key for this one.
Was that really famous one the really big one that came out around the time of Untitled Goose Game?
Disco Elysium?
Yeah, Disco Elysium. That would be an example, I think, of a kinetic visual, kinetic novel.
Dungeon Crusher. Ooh. Those
Of
are
course,
some
most Twine games are that.
cute pixel girls. That's always a positive, right?
Yeah. Is it cute pixel anime girls?
Possibly. sure what the gameplay is. Cavity Busters. There's Pop-Up Dungeon. Battle Brothers getting another expansion. The Wicked Sorceress. Bite the Bullet.
If you don't bite the bullet's gonna bite you.
The pixel art isn't too bad on this. Is this pixel art?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. I can't 100% tell because you're going too fast in YouTube compression. I think that is pixel art, though.
Wait, Mega Cat. Wait, it's a roguelite RPG shooter.
Pretty positive that's pixel art.
Yeah, not bad. Alright. It's an RPG. Anything with stats is an RPG, right?
Yep. Which is the reason why Steam is, flooded with RPGs.
No. Anyone can make a successful video game, right?
Yeah. It's easy. You just make a game and you're done. Every game you see on here, they're successful.
Wait, why do these games sound familiar? The Ambassador. Twin stick fantasy shooter around the ability to stop time. I don't know if I'm liking these graphics.
But there's stats in it, Matthew.
It's always interesting to get another time manipulating game. Do you remember that game we saw like a few months ago? It was all about time travel and like rewinding time. I never got a key for it. I don't remember the name of it.
Well, I guess you can look in, if you requested a key for it, look in your requested keys.
Alright.
And then see if you can find it.
Get a cup. Get your cup of coffee and relax exploring the mysterious world. Wait, I have to save a library. I mean, that just seems like right up my alley now.
Oh yeah, that sounds like a game for Josh.
And then do I give a talk at the library once I save it?
Well, you save it by giving the talk.
Okay. Alright, and then this will be the last page. Oh, the Dreamscaper's coming out for real. I think I'm getting a press key for that. Not sure. There's that Momo game from last week. Alright.
Where you play as Momo, supposedly. I mean, how do you play as Momo is a question.
Who knows?
Now they're going to come out with a Slender Man game where you play as Slender Man?
Isn't that what just Dead by Daylight is?
Could be.
Alright. But I think let's get to our main topic, because I think this is going to be a lengthy one. About successful or useful tips to make a successful video game. Because as we've said, it is not as easy as we've been making layup for the last 50 minutes.
Oh, you sure? Because I thought you just made a game and it succeeds. Roll credits.
And I think the first thing we need to kind of get on topic about is what does success mean as a developer? Because there are some people, and I think this kind of really shows like both the level of commitment as well as the level of understanding about being in the game industry of somebody. Some people will think that success means 5 people download my game, or my friends and family really like it. Other people think success is it sells 10 million copies and I can, quit my day job, buy an island, and never have to work a day again in my life.
Yeah. So, I mean, success is kind of all those things. But there's only one success that, we normally refer to, and the one we normally refer to is building a game that sells enough copies to break even. And I mean break even for all of your time, and assuming that you paid yourself, and if you didn't pay yourself, you still have to count that.
Mm-hmm.
You have to pay all of your teammates. You have to pay them reasonable amounts. All of that. That's what, and you have to, break even or better.
Mm-hmm.
That's what success on a video game would be. Now then, there's successfully making a game. It's not a successful game. It's successfully making a game, and that's hey, I'm a newbie. I made a game. Here, play it. It's a big accomplishment to cross that finish line because many people never do.
Yep.
And when I say big accomplishment, I mean even game jams, because like a lot of people don't even finish game jam games. It's 3 days of commitment, and they don't even finish. I think like a lot of the game jams I entered, kind of thing, like 6,000 to 10,000 people entered the competition.
Mm-hmm.
Only like 3,000 people actually had a game in the competition after it ended.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, that is an accomplishment. That is a success, but that's not the success that you should measure on. That's a success you should be glad that you're progressing, not a success as in you're a success. Because you're not a success until you're making a living as a game developer.
Yeah.
Now, then there are hobbyists that never want to succeed that way. Their goal isn't to succeed that way. And then, for them, success is I made something for my friends to play, or I made something for my girlfriend to play, or I made something for, to meme Josh kind of thing, where every platform is a plate, and he's plate forming all the way through, and it's got masochist difficulty to where everything kills him everywhere, and it's like the ultimate Kaizo troll or masochist. But those are 3 different successes, but the one we're going to refer to is going to be the main one, the one where you break even on your game so that you have the money to continue to go forward and make games. You need to actually more than break even, because the fact is if you only break even, you can only do a scope the size of the one you just did. You can't do any larger. So you need to more than break even to be able to go up in that, or you have to invest more of your money into it.
Yep.
And that's harsh, because you don't want to have to pay to make games. You want to get paid for making games.
Yeah. And I think to Shark's point there, like we said, like there are different levels of success, and making a video game, actually seeing it through from beginning to end, that is definitely a feather in the cap for any game developer. But that's not where it stops. That's not, I release a game, I'm now a successful game developer, look at me, I can tell people how to do things. It doesn't work like that. That's just, step 1 of this like infinite journey of how to succeed here. And and I think another thing that you just said about, there are people who are happy just making hobby games, and this talk is not for them. If you don't care about making money, if this is something that you do, spare time, you don't care if this game makes a penny, you don't need to listen to us. You're not the intended audience for this. This is for the people who are thinking to themselves, I want to make a living in the game industry. And taking that step forward is very difficult. And again, we have to keep saying this whenever we have this discussion. So many people try to do this, and the majority of them unfortunately fail.
Yeah, I don't know anybody like that. I have never never taken that step forward and never failed. I have only, taken that step forward and succeeded.
Mm-hmm. And
Unless you count everything I've ever made.
and like we've said, every time we have these discussions, the consumer does not care about you. They don't care if you spend 10 years of your life perfecting your craft and making a platformer, if you spend, a year and a half making a visual novel game. All they care about is the product on page or on the store page or anything like that. And when you're trying to be, I don't think I would agree with that for it. Like, your fans will care. Again, like, your hard-earned fans, but that again leads into that issue of the echo chamber. If you only listen to your most hard-earned fans, you're never going to be able to improve.
Yeah, and the other thing is if you're depending on them, then you're not going to be successful.
Unless they each buy 50 copies of your game, then you're set.
No, I mean they probably won't have to buy a lot more than that. They'll probably have to buy a few thousand copies of your game each.
Just get one billionaire as your fan, you're set.
Yeah.
Again, easy.
I mean, is Elon Musk a billionaire?
I think so.
We could get. I know he's got more than $1 billion worth of assets, but I think a lot of his assets are tied. A lot of his money's tied up.
Mm-hmm.
Don't know if he's actually a billionaire. Actually, of liquid finances kind of thing.
Just get that Jeff Bezos. Like in a minute he earns like $100,000. Just ask him for like 1 minute's worth of money and you'll be good.
Yeah, go to Jeff Bezos and make him your number one fan.
Yep.
He's the only fan you need.
Exactly.
Just have him buy 1 million copies of it.
And when you're taking that step forward in terms of trying to make a living off video games, like Shark said, this is when you have to start thinking about money. You have to start thinking about income and revenue, because without that, you don't have a company.
Mm-hmm. And you also have to realize that when you're thinking about the money, the fact is rev shares, that kind of thing is almost guaranteed to not happen. Like if you do a rev share or anything along that lines kind of thing, what's likely to happen is 3, 6, 7, 10 years down the road, you'll still be trying to get that game made on, rev share person number 568 millionth, and you're probably not even 10% of the way done with that game.
Yeah, and we saw with like Motion Twin, I think they did either a rev share or some kind of, I think they did a co-op in terms of how they designed Dead Cells. And that was just kind of like we're just going to make this idea. Now that the game is successful, they're like, okay, we need to get serious about this. And this is why, like, again, going back to the whole rev share thing, like, why a lot of people like the idea of Kickstarter or Fig or Indiegogo, because it's basically that kind of crowdfunding means you get the money and then you're free, well, quote-unquote free, to do with it what you want. But again, though, you don't release a successful game, then you're blacklisted.
Yeah, and the issue with Dead Cells development kind of thing is they weren't doing a rev share. They were doing like a co-op or something, which was basically sort of what I did on my last game. So it's not, it was basically two people that who are friends kind of thing that team up together to make a game, and they might not make it all by themselves, but they make a large majority by themselves, and then they do a little bit of outsourcing here and there, and that's how the last one went. And I wouldn't say there's anything wrong with that as long as you have a second person that is really dependable. Like, before we even did that, we'd been working together for probably about, 4 years. Probably, before that. Several years before that. We had been working together since, a like 2014 or so. So maybe it wasn't 4 years. It was like 3, 2, something like that. Either way, we had a built-up relationship of working together, kind of thing, and we were doing the basic rev share kind of thing, and it wasn't working. And I was like, everybody keeps on quitting and just leaves me and Monkey. I was like, all right, Monkey, I've got an idea. Let's stop all this rev share stuff, and let's you and me make a game that you and me alone can make, excluding music. And maybe Carlos will come in and help us with the music. Maybe he won't, and we'll find some assets or some we'll find somebody cheap to hire. Carlos came in, ended up giving us a bunch of music, which was all stolen, and then we found that out and scrapped all that and went to go look for assets, and all of it was crap, so we scrapped that idea. And then we found somebody to outsource for pretty dang cheap. We outsourced them. It wasn't the best music, but it was plenty serviceable music kind of thing. And we released our first game, through basically a co-op between him and I. And then and then we did some outsourcing kind of thing. And the game wasn't successful or anything, but, we were, projecting that it was going to do about 30,000 copies, which would have broke us even and then some, but we didn't. We did 127. It was about 300 times worse than the projection, because the way you do the projections is you take your wish list and you multiply that by 2, and that's your first week sales, and then you take that and multiply that by 2, and that's your first month sales, and then you take that and you multiply that by 5, I think it is, and you get your first year, and then you multiply that by 2, and you get your 3 years, which is basically the life of the game. And we came out to roughly 30,000 copies. It didn't turn out that way because we had 1,000-something wish list, and 1,000 times 2 is 2,000, so we should have sold 2,000 copies in the first week, but we sold 9.
Yep. And this is, again, what makes these kind of discussions so difficult, is that, as we've said, whenever we have these discussions about design or about being successful, things change on a month-by-month basis. Would you say one month doesn't work the next? Would you say a year ago certainly doesn't work? And the market is such a amorphous element when it comes to the game industry. You don't know what people are going to be thinking 2-3 years down the line. I've told stories about developers, like one developer who I think he started a game in like 2011, 2012. It was a space strategy, space combat focused game, because nobody was making space games at that time. And then, guess what? Star Citizen started appearing. Star Citizen got people excited about Space Sim, so more Space Sims started to come out. And suddenly, the guy who was ahead of the curve, because it took him so long to make the game, he released it in a market where everyone was tired of space-related games.
Yeah, and I'm looking at that potential happening to me with my current game. And I am trying to avoid it like the plague. I'm trying to get out before the market gets flooded.
Yep.
I don't need to I don't need to be at the front of the pack. I don't need to be in the first part of the pack. I just need to be before the market gets flooded. Before people start being, oh, not another space game. Oh, not another cyberpunk game. Oh, not another zombie game. I pass, but you hadn't even seen it. I pass.
Yeah. And we saw it with, the zombie genre. We may see that with deck builder roguelikes as well.
We're going to see it with, we're potentially going to see it with cyberpunk too. And, with my game being a cyberpunk slash sci-fi game that is a card game,
Mm-hmm.
you know, it's like if I get it out soon, it'll be it could be like the stars align and it's a perfect timing and like it goes wildly succeed. But if I get it out too far past that point, it's going to be just a huge flop, despite how amazing the game is going to be.
Yeah. And like we've said, there's so many things that can get in the way of a game beyond, again, just finishing a title. Like, for this discussion, we're not even talking about finishing a game, because that should be, we're assuming that you've already managed to finish a game. We're talking about
or at least a game jam.
Yeah. We're talking about how do you take that step into the business side. And another major part about this is that you have to do the business. We've said this many times over. There are developers who they don't want to do any PR. They don't want to, organize how their game is being made. They don't want to talk to fans or contact press or content creators. And you can't do that anymore in today's market. You probably couldn't even do that like 5-6 years ago. And I think one of the things that I find very interesting is like how like the newer generation of developers, the people who are getting out of school or college like now, maybe 2-3 years ago, in a way I think are probably better prepared than some of the older developers entering the indie space for the first time.
Yeah. I want to make a point to that, but first I'm going to reply to Ford there. If you're doing good enough marketing, people will still get hyped. The thing is you're saying that if you pay enough money, then people will still buy your game. But that fact that you're paying all that money for all that marketing and everything is going to make it where you have to get a lot more from your game sales,
to justify
which you're not going to get because the market's already saturated, and you may be able to break even, kind of thing. But like if you're able to break even with spending all that money up front on marketing, if you didn't do the marketing, you would horribly failed. Or if you would have done lesser marketing, rather, not no marketing, but if you'd done no marketing, you were going to fail anyway. But if you did lesser marketing, you would have failed still.
Yeah.
And if you had released before the genre became oversaturated, and you did that same level of marketing, you would have probably been freaking rolling in cash. You're talking about the difference of spending a lot of money to potentially break even. And that's not a good way to go. You don't want to have to pay $1 million up front for the chance to make $1 million and $1.1 million that on a game that cost you $100,000 to make. Just breaking even. And the only way you were able to do that is because you put that $1 million out there. And you don't want to be forced into that. You want to not release into an oversaturated market.
Yeah. And again, like, this is part of that problem when it comes to being successful. You have to think about your budget. You can't just sit there and think, I'm just going to work on this game for the next 10 years. And then it will do amazingly well. You have to think again about how much money you're putting in versus how much money you're getting out of it. And it's a very tough conversation for people to have, because it's when things get real. You can't just be, in your head thinking, "Oh, I'll build the procedural generation algorithm in 2 months. I'll get all the gameplay bounds in another month. 3 days I can build a multiplayer architecture, and then I sell my game."
Yeah.
Yeah.
And to Matthew's point, how do you know if your game's worth marketing? Well, if you made a game, you should be marketing it.
Yeah.
It's a question on how much marketing kind of thing are you going to put into it. And that's a game by game basis and studio by studio basis and developer by developer basis. There's like so many caveats there that it's crazy.
Yeah. And let me see. 1 second
So
here.
it's very, very specific to the very specific case.
And now, to WRF's point about Remnant from the Ashes, yeah, that game did kind of appear out of nowhere. Now, they did have a major publisher, Perfect World Entertainment, who, let's see, they did... So, I mean, they had money. They did the Star Trek... Oh, they did publish Star Trek Online and a few other games. But again, they had a publisher. And a publisher that does their job is going to put, word out there. We saw that with No Man's Sky. And, getting on, what was it, the Night Show, one of those talk shows, or late night shows that talk about that game.
Yeah, that was Sony.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And to Forrest about fan games, like, that is its own weird topic, like, right there. Like, I would not advertise a fan game, especially if it's based on someone else's IP that you don't own.
Yeah, that's like advertising that you want to have your game taken off the internet.
Yeah, it's basically like advertising, hey, look at me, I stole all this stuff. Aren't I great?
Yeah.
It's like going to the police station and saying, hey, what's so, it's so easy to steal stuff. Look at all the stuff I just stole from across the street.
It's like going and robbing a bank and then having a party. You're throwing money around in front of the bank.
Yeah, you rob a bank and you have the party on the doorstep of the bank.
Yeah, exactly. Right out in front of it.
Yeah.
While the alarm's still going off.
Oh yeah. Well, the alarm adds to the party. It's a rave.
Yeah. Yeah. You don't want to market a fan game. You might want to tell some people about it that are interested in that kind of thing, but don't really market. Go off of word of mouth kind of thing. Probably mostly for that.
Yeah.
You definitely don't want to pay anything to market it.
Oh no. And when you're trying to make something, yeah, thank you for that, Dave. I thought I remember that. That when you're trying to make something that is going to be successful, as we've said, you not only have to do the marketing, you have to do the business organization, or just organizing how things work. And this stuff is boring. This is doing your paperwork or doing your homework before you can go, play games or make games in this aspect. But at the end of the day, it still has to be done. And whether you are part of a one-man studio or you are working with 20, 30, 40 other people, there needs to be somebody who has that, who can see the forest for the trees in terms of how the development is going. And like I said a few minutes ago, I think this is why a lot of younger developers are kind of having that leg up. They've gone to school to have these formal educations. Ideally, they've been talking to developers who have been successful, and they're able to kind of learn what these mistakes are before they even make them.
Yeah. The thing everybody has to realize about game development as a profession is a business. It's a work, it's a job. You're an entrepreneur if you are the CEO of a game dev company. And you're the CEO if you're the one person in there, or if you're the top person out of 10, 15, 30, 200, 5 billion kind of thing. And you have to realize that if you're running a company, if you're the CEO and you're running a company, that you have to treat it like a company, because it is a company.
Yeah. And one thing I always say, the game industry is a fun business, but at the end of the day, it's still a business. And as we've said many times, and we'll probably say many times in this cast, the money has to come somewhere. If you're not making money, if you are not even breaking even, then you are not successful in the game industry.
Yep. And I know nobody like that.
And
not me, not other shark, nobody.
And to Ford's point about the Five Nights at Freddy's fan games, yes, there are lots of fan games about, but the question is, how many of those are successful financially? And that, I think, is another point we need to kind of touch on. And there's a reason in the thumbnail for this show I included Hand of Fate 2. Hand of Fate and Hand of Fate 2 are two really great games from Defined Development. Critical successes. And it still bankrupted the studio and they had to close. And like we've said, having a good game is not a metric for, is not going to guarantee you financial success.
Yeah. And to Ford's point about the there's a lot of FNAF fan games that don't even use the assets. It doesn't matter, because even if they aren't stealing the assets, they're still stealing the IP and a lot of other things.
And there are some that just seem to be like straight up clones as well. And we see this in the mobile space as well. That, again, we saw this with Flappy Bird, Clash of Clans, Farmville, you name any big name success there's probably going to be a few dozen clones. And the clones may earn some money. Again, trying to kind of siphon off some of the success. But that's not
legal.
Yeah, it's not legal, and it's not leading. That's not how you build a successful company.
Yeah, and when I said earlier about that's still you're still in the IP. If you're making a fan game, that by definition is still in the IP. So, and still in the IP is a much greater offense than stealing assets. Because I mean, there are tons of asset flips out there that steal assets. There's some that don't steal assets and actually buy them. But those are far lower offenses than stealing somebody's IP. Far lower. Because and also they're far less likely to get in trouble, because more than likely if you stole assets from somebody that doesn't have a lot of money, kind of thing. Or doesn't care enough to get the backlash from going after you. But if you're still on an IP, they are legally required basically to go after you. And because if they don't, then they can lose their own IP.
That's why Nintendo is very aggressive when they find out about any kind of fan games based on their properties.
So, like, if you steal an IP, you even if you stole no assets, like you make you steal the Pokemon IP kind of thing, and you make your own Pokemon, you make your own battle mechanics, you make your own everything, and there is a game like that out there, and you are still very much taken down, because the only things in common, I think it was Pokemon Uranium, if I remember right, the only thing that was common between Pokemon Uranium and the actual Pokemon games was the name Pokemon and the fact that it was the genre, which is not copyrightable. But the fact that they had the Pokemon name meant that they were still in the IP.
Yep.
The fact, and then everything that was similar between the two, not the same, nothing was the same, but everything that was similar just added up on that IP kind of thing. And they were in gross violation. Now, if they had changed their name from Pokemon Uranium to Baka Bakamon Uranium, then they would have probably had no problems at all. They would have probably been legal in every single way.
Yeah, if you remember that,
and I will give points to anybody who realizes what I just said for the name.
Remember that Tam Tam game, wherever it was? It was like just like the PC version of Pokemon.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Do you know what I said, Josh, when I was saying the name?
No. Oh no. I think Ford does.
I'm pretty positive Ford knows it. He watches a no fan of me.
And yeah, like with Sega, again, like every company is different how they approach it. I mean, Sega did get the developers of one of the Sonic fan games, right? To do what was it? Which one was the last Sonic game? Now I don't even remember. Sonic Mania. There we go.
Yep.
And when you're trying to be successful in this industry, again, you have to be really careful about how much you're willing to put into these games. Because there are developers who will spend, 5-10 years on a single title and expect that game to, do gangbusters. And as we've said, the goal of being successful, or just the bare minimum of success, is you have to break even. If you can't even do that, then unfortunately it doesn't matter how innovative or unique your games are.
Yep. And I mean, should we address the elephant in the room, the one that's so big that you literally can't avoid it, but like so many people miss it, including myself, that I missed it on my last game?
Mm-hmm.
And that's aesthetics.
Yep.
If you do not have not okay aesthetics, not good, well, you technically have good enough aesthetics, but when we're talking about good enough aesthetics, we're not talking about good enough art. We're talking about really dang good art to get good enough aesthetics. You have to have really, really good art in order to have good enough aesthetics, because like people consider games to have bad aesthetics that have quite good aesthetics, kind of thing. What's some examples of games they talk about have bad aesthetics that have a really good aesthetic? They're just kind of in the bottom of that list of really good aesthetics.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any examples off the top of your head?
Of which one? Having just good aesthetics and that's it?
The bottom tier of good aesthetics that everybody thinks is crap, but good enough. We always joke about whatchamacallit,
Ori.
Yeah, Ori. But that was not true,
bottom
because
tier.
It's just a joke. Yeah. Bottom tier good aesthetics.
That's a good question. Ford saying Undertale. Would you consider like Hotline Miami?
Maybe. Something like that.
I mean, when we look at some of the games that we've seen, like when we do, like even for today, some of those screenshots, like there's so much that goes into selling your game based on the aesthetics and the screenshots you put out. And it's so easy to just kill any interest in your game when there's nothing that hooks the player upon looking at it.
Yeah, you have to hook the player visually on the store page before they'll buy it, or give it a try or anything, And if you have to hook a player twice, potentially a few times. You got to hook them with your aesthetics, and then you have to hook them with your trailer, and then you have to hook them with your price. Of course, that's the price is actually the easiest one to hook them with.
Yeah.
Because it, to the most part, doesn't matter what your price is, as long as everything else is good. you automatically hook them with the price because, like, Josh and I are, harder to hook their price than most people. But, most people will be like, oh, that game looks really good. It's $40, $60. I'll buy it, kind of thing. Josh and I are like, it's a $40 game. It's like, like it better prove its weight in gold before we touch it, kind of thing.
Oh yes,
but like, we're not the average consumer. The average consumer, if you sell them on everything else, like what is the Disco Elysium, like, people got sold on that really, really easily, and just because the aesthetics were so good and everything, and they just laid down $40. They were just shut up and take my money.
Yeah.
So, like, that is the least amount of hook you have to worry about. You don't really have to worry about the price. If you get the other two before it, the price is almost automatic.
Yeah.
Almost. That being said, if you charge $1 million for the thing, you're probably not going to sell any copies. But, if you're charging a reasonable price kind of thing, it's pretty much hooked and sold kind of thing. Like, for the longest time, $15 has been the, sort of minimum for a good indie title. Now it looks like that's changing to $20 for the minimum of a good indie title.
I would say.
Yeah, maybe. I haven't really seen many 25s. I mean, like, no more than what was already around. I mean, like, 7 Days to Die was 25, several years ago when it entered early access. But, that was a completely different thing because that's a lot larger scope game and probably a higher tier kind of game. But, like, we're talking about the bottom tier indies kind of thing. And by the bottom tier, I don't mean like the worst indie games. I mean like the lowest scope indie games that are good are pretty much $15, and now they're going up to $20.
Yeah, and I think for a lot of people, when we talk about why this matters, is that again, it's that always like the snowball effect. That if you do one thing right, it usually means you're doing something else right, and it's very hard, I think, for developers to grasp that. Because as we've said, there are a lot of people who will look at the success of a game and not understand why it succeeded. In many cases, even the original developers don't know why it works so well. And a lot of this, again, comes down to just keep doing the right thing. And as we said, this is all designed to mitigate the risks. And we've said this before about, sometimes being in the game series is like trying to win the lottery. And the better that you can do at it, the more tickets you have. And like with something like the Darkest Dungeon, that they went really hard early in terms of getting awareness for the game. That awareness led them, and to do that, they really focused on their aesthetic. By really focusing on their aesthetic, they were able to get a lot of interest, which helped them with the Kickstarter. The Kickstarter helped them with the development of the game, which then gave them the motivation to go on early access. And it's just like a constant scaling up of events that led to that game being successful. And there are people who have said Darkest Dungeon just won because it was a difficult game that had Lovecraft in it. That was the only reason why it succeeded.
And that's, somebody blind trying to tell me what color the sky is.
Yeah.
Which it's charcoal black.
Yeah.
In the middle of the day, right?
And
because a blind person can't see except for the back of their eyelids. Well, they technically can't see that either, but you get the point. It's charcoal black.
And again, there are people who will they do not or they cannot understand why certain games succeed. And again, we've said this before, there are people out there who will say that any kind of marketing is you selling out, you're scum if you dare promote your game on Reddit, or you make a Twitter or make a tweet about it. But you need to get the word out about this game, because if you're not excited about your own game, why should anyone else be?
Yeah, I mean, if somebody wants to consider that selling out on a game,
Mm-hmm.
then every game they play, you bought a game of somebody that sold out
Yeah.
because you wouldn't have that game right now if they didn't sell out, according to your definition, because you wouldn't even know it existed.
Yeah. Oh, to WRF points, there are like Facebook groups of like indie developers, saying, don't do any marketing, how dare you? Just make a good game and it will work. Or they'll immediately take down any posts or threads when you say, hey, look at this great game I'm working on, or things like that.
Yeah. Sounds like a bunch of hobbyists.
Mm-hmm.
Because none of them going to ever make a professional developer.
Mm-hmm. And like we've said, there's nothing wrong with being a hobbyist. But at the end of the day, if you're trying to make a living off of your video games, then you need to be bringing in money. And if you want to bring in money, you need to make something that is appealing to people. And again, like I always turn to developers like Cliff Harris, Jake Burgett, Jeff Vogue, especially like developers who combine probably have like 50 to 60 years of experience living off of their games. And they understand the costs of what it means to put the stuff in their titles. That, hey, a cool idea that we have no idea that it's going to work or not, maybe we shouldn't spend 2.5 years of development trying to get this thing to work.
Oh, that sounds like a great idea. Why not invest every bit of money?
Take out a few mortgages.
On Red 39, spend that will and everything, and you're bound to succeed because there is a 1 in 50 chance that it's going to land on Red 36, and 1 in 50 chance spending on a wheel. That's basically 100% right there. That is practically guaranteed. So why not? Just go down the gambling path.
And we all know 95% always equals 100, right? When you play XCOM.
Oh yeah, and 99% always equals 100 too.
Oh yes.
100%, miss in the case of XCOM.
Mm-hmm. And with these developers who have lasted so long, they know their games aren't pulling in tens of millions of dollars. But they can build them knowing or have a really good idea of what they're going to get out of it. And like we said, if at the end of the day you can earn enough money that you can make another title and you're still, you don't have to worry about not feeding yourself that month, that is, 2 thumbs up success for a lot of people.
Yeah, I mean, the goal of success in indie development is being able to pay yourself, being able to eat reasonably, being able to make the game reasonably, and be able to continue to make games and eat and drink.
And not just like ramen, because I know there are a few ramen eaters in the chat.
Yeah, I mean, like, it's fine to eat ramen to save money at the beginning, but you don't, if you eat ramen for 3 years or 6 years, even just 3 years, you're going to be in such bad health that you're not going to be able to make games anymore. You're going to be in the hospital.
Yeah.
And you're going to have expensive hospital bills to pay. You don't want to eat ramen,
and
nothing but ramen for 3 years. You're going to end up in the hospital.
And to Foreign's point, indie devs will be able to fund the next project. Yep, that's basically true for a lot of developers. Some developers can live for a very long time off of one success, like we saw with Arkin Games, Minecraft being a really good one, even stuff like Factorio and Dwarf Fortress. But most people aren't going to get that winning lottery ticket. The game that just keeps earning money day in and day out. Because at some point, everybody who's going to play your game has already played it. Mm-hmm. And you're not going to be able to earn infinite money off of a title forever.
Yeah, and I think we need to address this point too. When we're talking about feeding yourself and not ramen noodles, we also don't mean like $200 steaks either for dinner. We're talking about reasonable meals.
You're
You
not
know,
you're not flying. You're not going to have a $200 steak on your own private jet.
yeah. I mean, you could, but we're not talking about that. We're talking about you can have a reasonable meal that is like if it's a family meal, anywhere between like $3 to $10, per person kind of thing.
Yeah.
In that family meal, or individual meals, 5 to $7 or less kind of thing. And we're not talking about going out to eat at Hardee's or wherever. I mean, you could do that occasionally, but you don't want to do that all the time. You need some good meals.
Doesn't every indie game developer have a private jet now?
Most.
Okay.
I have my own private jet, but I don't ever use it because it's not compatible with the water.
Yeah.
So I got my own submarine to replace it. I sold my jet, my private plane, and bought me a private submarine.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't even use the submarine because the fact is it's oxygenated inside, and so my friends can't go in there. I can go in there because I can handle oxygen, but most of them can't. So like,
wait, so oxygen is included?
Point. Huh?
Is the oxygen included in it?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, the oxygen is definitely included. Clay has not been into that submarine.
And like we've said, there's another point that I definitely want to discuss, and it's something that I think about a lot. Like in the first part, we were talking about people playing games and finishing them. Is that you need to be always kind of growing and learning as a developer, because there's a tendency, especially among hobbyists, just to keep making the same game. That hey, if 50 people really like this game, I'm just going to keep making the game to appeal to the same 50 people. And I'll be a success. The point is that you should be growing. It's the same thing with this YouTube channel. That having 100 subscribers who really like you and that's all you're appealing to is not how you make a successful YouTube channel. It has to keep growing. You want as many people to know about you and to support you as you can. And
well, I thought the key was with YouTube was to make the most drama you could, so that everybody heard about you and everybody came here.
Exactly. Yeah, I need to work on that. I need to get good making drama.
Yeah, you need to get good at YouTube.
Mm-hmm. And there are developers, like we've said, and I always go back to the echo chamber effect as one of the surefire ways to kill your chance to succeed in the game industry. Because if all you do is listen to the people who already love you, then you're not really growing or improving. And with the game Hellpoint, for instance, I'm seeing people just like slavishly defend the developers for UX and UI problems. And I need to have another UX rant. I think I may make a video about that this week. That there are some very basic annoying issues in Hellpoint that people are defending the developer over to the point that it's hurting the game. If you remember the Carrion example, not having a map with maze-like environments. And
yeah, I mean, you don't need a volume slider in there either.
No, or just being able to do key rebinding. Everyone likes to attack with the left directional button on a gamepad.
Yeah. And
it's
jump
artistic.
with the right directional pad.
Mm-hmm. And you press F6 to open doors in an adventure game.
Yeah, and you got to see, the real masterpiece is when you have to use a controller, keyboard, mouse, mic, and touchscreen all at the same time in your controls.
Yep, definitely. There's nothing wrong with that.
No.
And again, this is why playtesting, and I keep saying this, like, it seems like this is becoming my word of the day, that playtesting is king when it comes to iterating and refining a game idea. And I don't think there is any successful game that did it without some level of playtesting. And again, when we say playtesting, we don't just mean show it to your family and they all say they love it.
Yeah. Because your family's going to be biased. You have to show it to people who are not going to be biased. Well, not be biased towards you specifically in an extreme amount. I mean, there's always going to be some bias because, everybody's biased. Mm-hmm. And there's always going to, likelihood if you talk to them, they're going to have some kind of bias towards you.
Mm-hmm.
But, talking to a stranger and having them, play your game or somebody like that is, much, less kind of thing. And there's also the fact of having somebody that is, fans of the genre and people who are not fans of the genre. That way you have people who are favored to the genre and people who are not favored to the genre.
Yeah. And again, this all fits under that umbrella of understanding the business of making these games. That, yes, you need to have an intended market for your game. That is definitely that's business 100 for this topic. If you make a game and say, I don't know who this game's going to appeal to, then that's not how you market a title. If you're making an RPG, you want to look at what RPG fans like. If you're making a strategy game, a platform, or a Souls-like, or Rouge-like, whatever you want to call it, you need to understand what that market expects out of that game. But
a red-like.
Yeah. But going beyond that, it's also important to see what people who aren't super hardcore fans of your game enjoy. And I think this goes back to what we were saying earlier about retaining somebody through the entirety of your game. You can have a game that sells reasonably well, all your fans say they love it, but then when you look at the stats of the game, 8% of the people who actually bought your game maybe played it for more than an hour. And some people will say, well, who cares? I still got 5,000, 10,000 sales, whatever. So what if only, 100 or 500 of those people actually saw my game through to the end? But if you don't think about how to improve your approachability and your playability, you're not going to be able to grow that audience. And you're not going to be able to see and understand why people don't like your game. There's always going to be people who will hate your game no matter what. If you're trying to build a first-person shooter, there are people who hate first-person shooters. There's nothing you can do that's going to convince those people otherwise to play your game.
Yep, you're not going to convince me to play your first-person shooter game.
Yeah. But if you can improve the onboarding and the approachability of your game, it opens your game up to a larger market. You could get somebody who has never played a first-person shooter, or somebody who's looking for a new game and they hear all these recommendations. And you can earn a fan, even if they don't like that genre, they may still like your approach to it, and they could become a fan for life. But
yeah, I mean, I had many instances of that with the word of the day, Chromasia, because there's many people who don't like RPGs, don't like anything turn-based, don't like anything, definitely don't like any tactical RPGs kind of thing. And they played Chromasia, and they fell in love with it,
And like I always say, there's a difference between somebody who's not a fan of a genre and somebody who's not a fan of your take of a genre.
Mm-hmm. Well, they weren't fans of the genre because the genre had, carried through a lot of the, their one main complaint, which was it's hard to learn, and
That's
they hate the genre because they don't understand it. They can't learn it. And that's the reason why they hated it. And when I made one, example of the genre that was easy to learn, they were like, oh, I actually like this, or this ain't bad, now that I actually know what I'm doing kind of thing, it's not bad. Before it's just, I do this thing and something happens. I don't know what happened. I don't understand what's going on here. But now they understand, and they understand because of the UX, because of the UI, because of the tutorial, because of the onboarding, because of all that. They were able to understand, and when they were able to understand, they could now enjoy it, kind of thing. It's like the old Silent Hill games. Basically, Pyramid Head was somewhere back there in the fog that you could that was like 6 feet in front of your face. But everybody that knew that found him and everything liked him, kind of thing. In theory, go with my analogy here. Everybody that finds him likes him. But they could never find him because the fog was 6 foot in their face, and he was clear across the screen. He was barely in render distance. They would have to walk so far through something they didn't like, they didn't know they liked. They weren't liking at the moment because they didn't understand it, to get to that point where they found Pyramid Head to like it. But they would never get that far because it would just drive them away. So they would, quit, right away, kind of thing, before they even got to that point. And, through the UI, the tutorial and everything, provided them the way to basically lift the fog, extend their view distance to where they could actually see Pyramid Head much sooner. And, when they seen him, they're like, oh, I actually like this. I hated every other game just like this. But now that the fog is not in my face, I actually like it.
Yeah. And again, this applies to a lot of genres. The grand strategy, the 4X, roguelikes. In my book, I talk about how one of the big things about kind of the growth of the roguelike genre the last 10 years was looking more at onboarding and playability. Not just making every game have ASCII graphics, not just making it brutally difficult. That there is a market, again, there's always a market for these extremes. But if you're trying to sell your game, you have to make it as approachable as possible. Dungeons of Dreadmore from Gaslamp Games, one of the reasons why that game succeeded so well at that time was that no other roguelike was really thinking about new players. Having a cartoon aesthetic, having difficulty settings, so that somebody who doesn't want permadeath, super challenging gameplay can actually play this game. And it sounds so simple when I say this, but there are developers out there who will refuse or think that the frustrating parts are what sells this game, because that's what their fans keep saying. La Mulana is another really good example of that. Again, Hellpoint as well. But even though, and to John's point, about dumbing down, there's always that struggle. And again, it's always about trying to figure out what is the core gameplay of your game. What is going to keep people, what's going to bring them in? And there should be nothing that distracts from that. And yes, you're going to have people who complain, a player can't die in 2 hits in my roguelike. Well, then this is just, the casual baby version of, this game. But if you lose 20 people, 20 super hardcore, and you gained 800 new fans, then you gotta kind of weigh, you gotta pick and choose your battle there.
Yeah, but to John's point, we're not talking about dumbing things down. We're not talking about changing the game. We're just talking about teaching the player how to play your game better.
Yeah. And again, that's onboarding. That is UI and UX design. And
those are part of it.
Yeah. Like that Lobotomy Corporation game that I showed the other night. Very interesting premise, but just some very horrible onboarding. And as we've said before, onboarding, UI, UX design, they are not guarantee winners. They are not going to, add 100,000 more sales to your game. But you have to consider again, what is somebody thinking about your title? That, are they going to load up your game and go, oh my god, this is terrible, immediately refund it, even if it is a great game? We use that example again about, masochism points. That everyone has a pain tolerance when it comes to their titles. Somebody who will stick through a game like La Mulana, like Hellpoint, like Labami Corporation, they will probably say it's one of the best games ever made, never change a thing. They are when we say like 10% of the people will finish a game, they are in that 10%. But it's not a sound business strategy to base all your sales on only having 10% of the people who buy it actually play your game.
Yeah. And I want to ask John, how is it a risk? How is putting a good tutorial in your game a risk? I mean, I consider it a risk not to put a good tutorial in your game. Not good onboarding in your game. That's more than a risk. That's flirting with danger right there, not doing that.
And the whole Dark Souls, the difficulty setting thing, that is a larger discussion about difficulty design. I don't think we have the time to get to today.
Yeah, that's not an onboarding thing.
That is design. And again, like, I could go on an hour-long rant about that. I'm actually working on a post about Dark Souls right now. But when you're trying to be successful, you have to be able to look at why should somebody play your game? And this is a tough question, I think, for a lot of developers to answer. Because you can say, I really like my game. Well, that's great. Now convince, 500,000 other people to really like your game, and then you'll be at least somewhat set. And you have to be able to look at a title and say, why would somebody like this game? Why would somebody not like this game? And this is tough for a lot of people to do. This is where the whole, the artistic side comes in. How dare you hate my work that I, broke my fingers working for 3 years on this game. You don't know anything about this game. It's your fault you don't like my game.
Yeah. And to John's point, if you're talking about something new, well, every game is something new to somebody. So we're talking about every game.
And like I say, like, every game could theoretically be somebody's first game. And this is, again, another thing I hear from a lot of indie developers. That they're going to say, I'm making a visual novel turn-based strategy roguelike, a very specific game. Why should I care about somebody who's never played a visual novel, roguelike, or turn-based strategy game? And that's when you fall into that trap when it comes to onboarding and playability. That if you're not thinking about somebody brand new playing your game, then you are making the same mistakes that everybody else has made, but you don't have the luxury of that name. Again, a company like Clay or Red Hook can leave a few mistakes in their game if we can find them, because they're big names now. Nintendo doesn't have to worry about, everything in terms of onboarding, because they know their name carries weight to it. If you are a no-name developer with no title to your name, you don't have that excuse. How many platformers have I played that have no button prompts whatsoever? No tutorials, no options menu, no volume slider. In some cases, not even a title screen. You just turn the game on, you're in a level, there's nothing else to it.
So what we're saying is, basically, in order to succeed, to become a big name, you have to do stuff better than the big names do.
Because they've already been established.
If you don't, then you're not like, the chances of you succeeding are next to none. Because why would they risk buying a game from a no name from you, versus a game there, somebody that's already got a proven track record that actually isn't that much of a risk.
Yeah.
And believe it or not, EA is not that much of a risk to a lot of people. So, you're going to have to make something better, or along the lines of, a great game like Oxygen Not Included, 7 Days to Die, FTL. You're going to have to make a great game along those lines to be able to get in there to actually be able to make some kind of name for you. Like the people who made Darkest Dungeons had to make Darkest Dungeons to get where they are. That was, I don't know if that was their first game or not, but it probably wasn't. And, if you could probably look at their past games and see that, maybe they were great and everything, but they had no attention. They had to go beyond great into Darkest Dungeon to get that point where they got the name, and once you get the name, you're pretty much set. As long as you don't screw things up too bad.
Or you just release another Diablo game like Blizzard.
Yeah. But if until you get that name, you're going to have to do better. Basically better than people that have the names. Yeah. So that means you can't do the same thing they're doing. You can't make Darkest Dungeon 2 the new version of Darkest Dungeon because that ain't going to work, because that already exists. You're at best equaling them, but you got to be better. And when I say better, I don't mean that you have to have the best aesthetics. I don't mean you have to have the best anything. But I'm saying that as an overall game experience, to get that name, you have to exceed those that came before you. And, which is why Darkest Dungeons got the name, because it exceeded those that came before it.
Yeah. And you can't...
Why FTL got its name, too.
Exactly. I was just about to bring up FTL. I mean, how many clones of FTL did we play, or similar games, that just didn't even come near FTL? The same thing with Five Nights at Freddy's. There are a lot of games that have copied that same formula, even if they change it in major ways, but it still has that DNA, and they don't do anywhere near as good as it. If you remember earlier this year, Shar, I played that game that looked like a more complicated version of FTL, and I just was not feeling it. And,
yeah, I had that one on my wish list until you played it, and I was like, yep, removed from wish list.
And again, just because you look at a game that you like doesn't mean you understand why that game did well. And there's always that trap that people fall into. Darkest Dungeon, brutally difficult dungeon crawler. I make a brutally difficult dungeon crawler, I'll succeed just like Darkest Dungeon. Or I make a ship-based combat system like FTL. Or a card deck battling roguelike like Slay the Spire. And again, basing your design off of somebody else without growing it or doing something meaningful with it, you will never succeed as well as they did. And we saw that the MMO bus of the thousands under that same motto. Hey, World of Warcraft was pulling in 10 million subscribers. Let's make a game just like World of Warcraft, and even if we get, 2 million people, we'll be a success. But at the end of the day, you're still competing with World of Warcraft.
Yeah. By the thousands, are you referring to, like, the year 1000 to 99, or does 1100 work too?
Sure. Oh yeah, and that will work as well for, just do World of Warcraft, but let's make it for $50,000. I'm sure we could make a World of Warcraft killer.
Yeah. The thing is you have to have something, a good, like, even if those games were different than FTL kind of thing, that's not going to make you succeed. What you have to do is be meaningfully different in a good way.
Mm-hmm.
And, I have a theory of what that would be for FTL kind of thing. It would be a very, very different game kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
But, I don't know. I'm still like puzzling that thought, but like the point is you need to offer them something that is really, really good and different. Not just FTL 2.0, I mean, if you bought the rights to FTL and then you updated the graphics and everything and added a few new modes, maybe.
Yeah.
But that's if you have the money to buy a giant IP at this point,
Mm-hmm.
And we've seen stuff like that fail, like the what was that, Dungeon Defenders.
Mm-hmm.
When Dungeon Defenders sold their IP and everything, and that other company bought it, and I've met one of the marketing people from that. Met in the loosest terms of it. I seen him talking on a Discord. I didn't say anything to him, but because I didn't want to rant for about an hour to him. But the fact is
Mm-hmm.
they took that game, they updated the graphics, and it was higher res and everything, but it had less aesthetics.
Yep.
They changed stuff for the worse. They did all kinds of really, really bad things for the game. And yeah, I mean, like, the only chance for them to remotely succeed is not based off of the game, but based off of the IP they bought.
Yeah.
Because, like, if they had released that under any other name, without owning the IP, that game would be failed city kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And the fact that they have the IP has that chance that maybe they'll pull through because they have that name, because they sit there and bought it with cash.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think anybody watching these videos has the option to buy that name with cash. And if they do, come see me. I need some money.
And we are just about at time, at least for me. So I'm trying to think if there's any major points left to discuss. And yeah, I think to Foreign's point, yeah, like the niche spaces where unique mechanics and gameplay ideas will work. And again, like when we see these games blow up, they become the trendsetters for other developers. But you have to always be able to look at your game and understand that I have to do something different. I can't just be making the same game as everybody else. And even with that said, onboarding is still a factor in that. Because we've played unique games that nobody else has ever made before that are still horrible in terms of onboarding. Do you remember that game that was kind of like... it was like I had to control cavemen. It was like all like fixed screens, acid, looks like ripped acid sound effects, things like that.
I don't remember that one, but it sounds familiar.
Yeah, it was
sounds like a bunch of other games.
Yeah. I guess for you, do you have any other points to discuss before we begin to wrap things up?
Well, we covered that you got to run your company like a business. We covered that you have to market your game rather, not your game. You got to market your game too, but that's another topic entirely. We won't get into that this stream.
We have to eat ramen, but not too much.
Yeah. So you don't have to eat ramen. Ramen can help though, as long as you don't do too much of it. You got to have aesthetics. You got to have a lot of aesthetics, and a lot of aesthetics. Not because a lot of aesthetics gets you to that minimum level. and it takes a lot more to get to the upper level. But you need a lot just to get to the minimum level to be considered to have bad graphics.
We talked about marketing.
Yeah, we talked about marketing. We talked about we didn't talk about trailers or screenshots.
Well, I think we kind of did that in a previous topic, though. But
Yeah.
we could touch on that a little bit. That you need, again, this all goes back to presenting your game to people. And yeah, like to Forrest, one, a bad game with amazing graphics, yep, it will get people in. And there are people who will just flock to a game on aesthetics or on story alone and don't really care about the game. We saw that with kind of like where the water tastes like wine as well.
Mm-hmm.
But you need, but I think this will be my final point, and then I'll throw over to you for talking about the marketing or stuff like that. That one game does not make a successful studio. It helps out a lot. Again, Minecraft, AI Wars, Dwarf Forge, etc. But the true hallmark of somebody who can survive and thrive in this game industry is that they are able to keep succeeding. They are able to keep earning enough money to continue making games. Because we have seen so many developers who release one solid game and then they go bankrupt maybe 2 or 3 years later. Because they're either A, not able to capitalize on that success, B, make a huge mistake with their next game, then they lose all that money, or they don't know why that first game succeeded, and then they just, once again go back to trying to chase that dream all over again.
Yep, which is the reason why it's a sort of good thing to fail on your first game.
Most people are going to fail in their first game. I think that's another very big point. Like, your very, very, very first game, the one that you actually finish and you put up on Steam, most likely it is going to fail commercially.
Mm-hmm. Almost guaranteed.
Mm-hmm.
Or you're 100% your money back. But your first game, you need to plan on your first game failing. Your first commercial game. Mm-hmm. The game that you put a lot of money into to make and finish, and it takes you 2 to 3 years to make. You need to plan on that failing. You need to do everything you can to stop it from failing. But your plan needs to be, okay, this is likely to fail. This is how we're going to go forward after that point. Here's where here's the money we're making our next game with. We have a path forward. Yeah, you have to succeed to get a refund.
Yep.
That's what breaking even is.
Yeah.
That's the refund. But you have to plan on what's going to happen, not if you fail, but when you fail. Mm-hmm. Because the likelihood is that it is going to fail. Yeah. There's like a 99.999999999% chance that it's going to fail. You have more likelihood to win $1 billion from the lottery than succeeding on your first game. Mm-hmm. Your first commercial game. It's been done before, but it is so rare.
Yeah.
And you're more likely winning the lottery.
And again, I want to point out, because I know somebody will probably leave a comment on this in the recorded version, well, what about something like Five Nights at Freddy's or Angry Birds or stuff like that? And again, the answer to that question is, those weren't the first games. They were the first games you heard about from that developer. But again, Rovio made like 70 different projects and other games before that failed. Scott Cawthorn he's been making games, I think, since like the 90s, that most likely everyone who's played Five Nights at Freddy's will never ever hear of.
Yep. And, a lot of these games that you think are the first games are just the first games you know about, mm-hmm. and not very far from the first game. It may be the 70th, 100th, millionth game from them.
Here's a fun fact. Motion Twin, who made Dead Cells, they've been making games since 2001. They've been doing mobile games since that time. And Dead Cells was the first kind of, retail commercial game that they made. But again, it wasn't their first game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you know, that you have to count on that first game failing.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to do everything you can to prevent it, because the reason why you need to count on it failing is because, number one, it's likely to happen, and you need to, try to prevent it, because number one, you don't want it to happen for most reasons, because you don't want it to succeed just because you got lucky, kind of thing. I mean, luck is definitely a point of where you succeeding, but you want to succeed. You want to know that you succeeded because you got things right, and which is the reason why you're trying to do everything to not fail.
Mm-hmm.
So you're trying to get all the mistakes. You want to try to prevent all the mistakes that you're going to make, and then when you fail, then you go back and look at the mistakes that you did not realize that you made.
Oh yes.
And then once you learn that, then you can go back on your second time and maybe succeed with that second time. That's what I'm doing right now. I'm going back for the second time. I've been making games since like 2004.
Mm-hmm.
But, my first commercial game was The Word of the Day, Chromasia. And that was, what was that, 2018? July, I think it was 7/11/2018, I believe.
Yeah.
And yes, that day was on purpose. You guys know me plenty well enough to know that 7/11 was on purpose.
To Matthew's point about how important is crowdfunding, I think that may be a little too big. I think that may be its own topic at this point. And again, there is no magic bullet for how to succeed in the game industry. Everything that we've said are ways to mitigate the risks and give you a greater chance at success. But this will be, again, I keep saying this is my final point, I keep adding more points to it. But for any students, any younger people who are interested in the game industry watching this right now, at the end of the day, you can do everything right. You can have an amazing aesthetic. You can do marketing. You have a great gameplay loop. PewDiePie or whoever has looked at your game, and it can still fail. It can still fail commercially. And unfortunately, that can happen. Conversely, you could have somebody who does everything wrong, just has like horrible screenshots. It's just like a meme-filled game, and it could sell you 500,000 copies.
Yeah, I mean, Flappy Bird is pretty much that.
Mm-hmm. Or something like Goat Simulator or Getting Over It.
Yep.
And it sucks. Game development can suck like that very much for a lot of people. But
don't think you can make your own Goat Simulator or make your own game on purpose and and succeed that way. Mm-hmm. The fact that they succeeded was basically an anomaly in the Matrix.
Yeah.
The only way you'll succeed that way is if you glitch out the Matrix. That's the only way. If you don't glitch out the Matrix, then there's no way to succeed that way. Mm-hmm. But for those who know how to hack real life and glitch out the Matrix, they can really crap games like that and succeed.
Yep.
Yeah, Untitled Goose Game is another example. Not as much of a glitch, but still a glitch in the Matrix. But right. You have to really get that down, kind of thing, and you have to depend. Like even if you take all the risk mitigation, you do all these things, you get everything just right. The fact is I don't know what the actual percentage is, but I'm guessing there's if you do everything right, at that point you're probably at a 50-50 chance. You're at a coin flip whether you're going to succeed or fail. And it's a lot to risk on a coin flip. 3+ years worth of work, all this money that you put into it, all this other stuff. But the likelihood is on that first one, you're gonna fail, because more than likely you're not gonna have a coin flip. You're gonna have like 20 coin flips, and you're gonna have to get heads on every one of them because you didn't do all the risk mitigation. Because every step of the risk mitigation that you miss is another coin flip, and you have to you get heads on every single coin flip.
And there are some people who do get that lucky, who make all those mistakes, who don't do any onboarding, and their game succeeds. And then people will think to themselves, oh, how did they make all this money? Let me just copy them, and then they fail.
Yeah. You don't want to have to flip 5 billion quarters and have to get heads on all of them, all at the same time. One flip, all 5,000 of them, 5 million of them. You don't want to do that. You want to take out as many of those coins as you possibly can, so you can get it down to just that one coin. So you can just flip that one coin and have a 50% chance. And if you're going to do that, then you have a 50% chance of because you did everything right, you have a 50% chance of succeeding off of that coin flip. And if you succeed, then at that point you almost have to do coin flips not to succeed at that point. After that,
that's like Blizzard.
Yeah, I mean, Blizzard can endorse China and all this other stuff, and they get away with it. They could probably publicly behead somebody and still get away with it.
And since everyone's talking about the 80s and 90s, I have the perfect metaphor to end the stream on. It's like the show Legends of the Hidden Temple. If you remember it, that if the person goes into the wrong room, they get caught by a guard, and they have to give up one of their special coins to save themselves. So game design, mitigating the risk, is like having those special coins. You don't want to give them up, but you want to have them as a backup. Some people won't need them at all. Some people may need every last one of them to work in order to win the show at the end of the day.
Yeah, that's almost an inverse example of what I was talking about. Same thing, just flipped around.
Yeah.
Where tails is what you want rather than heads.
But we are at time, at least for myself, and I think that this is a good point to wrap things up, and I'm sure we'll be coming back to this in future topics and videos as well. So,
I think there's one last thing we need to do. We need to ask everybody, what do you guys want to see for more topics? Give us some topic ideas.
Yep. And for everybody watching this live or recorded, if there's anything you guys want us to discuss in a future piece, something that we can turn into either a mega topic or maybe do one day maybe like an AMA topic. We'll see how many we get through of fans. Let us know in the comments below. And if you are new and you enjoy things, be sure to check out our respective Discords linked down in the description of this video.
We got one there for crowdfunding. I think that's a pretty good one.
And Shark will put it on our endless list of topics. But with that said, thank you so much for tuning in. We do these shows every Sunday starting around 4:30 p.m. EDT right here on the channel. And if you are new, as always, be sure to subscribe and do all that other social media stuff. You can follow me on Twitter at GWBicer.
And you can follow me on Twitter at Nexus Games INC1. But I would more encourage you to join the Discord.
So to John's point, we haven't really started yet. This was just like the real Dark Souls of the chat begins right now.
Yeah.
This was all just the preamble. Now we start the real thing.
Exactly.
Probably like 30-40% heat. What about you, Shark?
Probably about 80-90.
There we go. Perfect. Alright, everybody. That is going to do it. I'll be back tonight for our regular game streams. And be sure to come back daily for discussions on game design here and on game wisdom, where examine the art and science of games. Until next time, have a great night.